We are live.
Well, thank you very much and welcome everybody. I would like to start this morning with a motion moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Wienko. Be it resolved, the council does now reconvene at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, July 14th, 2020. All those in favor? And that is carried. Otherwise, if not, I'd question why we would all be here. As is my habit most days, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples. They continue to care for this land. They continue to shape the township of Georgian Bay, and we want to show our respect. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they remain relevant today in guiding our decisions and our actions. Miigwech. Next on our agenda is item 8F, Financial Services 2020-15, the audited financial statements. And Ms. Boutiette, I would think that you're going to lead this off and introduce our guest to us, please.
For sure. Thank you, and through you, your worship. We have Nicole White from BDO, who is our partner auditor on the file for the GBT, our township audit. And we also have here Celine Anderson, which is our new deputy treasurer. I'd like to thank Celine personally. Her first duty assigned when she came on board with us, and I mean on board meaning remotely onboarding, which was a challenge of its own, was to prepare the year-end file in conjunction with Nicole. So thank you, both of you, and I will turn the floor to Nicole to give us the 101 notes on our draft financial statements.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Just where we're at, we are substantially complete the audit. This was our sort of first go doing everything remotely. We faced equal challenges, the same as everybody else, but I think it worked out okay, and we were able to get through it and get it done. With the help of your Celine especially and Julie. So there's just a couple outstanding things. I think we still have an outstanding legal confirmation that we'll chase the lawyer for with the help of Julie. We will need a management representation letter signed, and we do subsequent events work. So that is the work that we do since the year end up to today, and that will happen following this meeting. And we also are looking for approval of the draft financial statements that I'm going to go through briefly. As a result of our audit, we usually look for, significant deficiencies in internal controls and things like that. So that's just part of the process. And we didn't find anything significant this year that warrants putting anything in writing to council. So that for us, that's a good outcome, and I think it's good for you as well. So keep the controls in place that we have working. We did not hit on anything also that led us to believe there may be some fraud or weird stuff going on. So that's also good. Nothing came to light. Now we do just do sampling and look at a few things here or there, but nothing came to our attention. So I'm assuming there's still nothing from your end that's causing you concern in the area of fraud, our favorite word. We did have a couple minor, we call them unadjusted differences, and they totaled $41,000, which is really immaterial to the township. So there were two items that we did not adjust for. We didn't think that was necessary. They were related to, we confirm a number of accounts payable, and there was a small discrepancy on one of them of $14,000, and also a difference in vacation pay accruals. So neither of those were significant enough. We only made a few adjusting journal entries, but mainly in the area of your tangible capital assets. So cleaning up some disposals of assets that didn't get recorded. And that was to the tune of $29,000. So again, we did not make significant changes to the surplus that we started with. So I'm going to flip over to the financial statement. I think you've all received somewhat of a draft. These statements are consolidated. They do include the Georgian Bay Library, kind of on a line-by-line basis. Our audit report is a clean audit opinion again this year, so no reservations. So your balance sheet or your statement of financial position in PSAS language is page 4. I'm just going to touch briefly. You'll see that we had an improvement in the net financial asset position of about $620,000. So the net financial assets are in a positive position, which is an indicator of sort of financial health at this point in time. Remember, this was back in December of the municipality. The restricted cash doesn't change much year to year, and that's really comprised of your development charges, your gas tax, and your funds in lieu of parkland. There's not a lot of big changes on your statement of financial position, things fairly comparable year over year. We did invest about $2 million this year in tangible capital assets. And I think our amortization was slightly less than that. So you'll see, a bit of an increase in the tangible capital assets. On the income statement, which is the next page, page 5, you'll see the government transfers from Ontario were over budget, and we received some modernization funding of about $600,000 that is in that line. That was some revenues that, we didn't know about at the time we set the budget. So we have an annual surplus this year of just under 1.2 million. And 600 of that is that modernization funding, because I don't know that we have spent that at that time. There's a new note this year because of the situation that we are in, being COVID-19. So it's somewhat of a subsequent event note, just to highlight that there have been impacts on the global economy. Some of our assets and ability to deliver services may be affected, may not be affected. Like, we're getting through it. We seem to be getting through it. And it's just sort of a caution on the disruption. And we're still really not sure where we're going to end up when we're through this pandemic and everything is back to normal, which sounds like might be a ways off at the rate we're going. BDO has yet to decide to open any offices, so we are remaining closed to the public as well until such time as we can get all the offices ready to open. We do have a contractual obligation note, and the item in there is about $2 million for the Honey Harbor project. So part of the disclosures is recognize any things that the township has committed to. And that's my brief overview of the financial statement. Did anyone have any questions regarding sort of, the audit process or anything that's in the financial statement? I'm not sure how long you've had them to be able to digest them. Is everyone awake still?
Council, Councillor Douglas, I think I see your hand up. No, I do not. Okay, you're just resting. Any councillors wish to? Councillor Jarvis.
Just to keep everybody clear on this, I married an accountant, so I don't do this stuff at all. But I am curious, you mentioned 2 things. One, that you do a sampling of the financials in order and just to see if there are any discrepancies or things that don't look in line. Are you given guidelines or like, does Julie come to you and say, can you check through this specific area or whatever? Is this totally random on BDO's part as to where they pick to have a look around? And just secondly, you mentioned a discrepancy of $41,000, which is really immaterial given the full budget. I understand that. But do you look for any kinds of trends when you see that kind of discrepancy?
So part of our process is, some of it is we try and take a look at where we think risks of things going wrong are, and we kind of focus our procedures in those areas, but they're still somewhat random. So we do look at journal entries and we decide, okay, how are we going to pick those? Julie and your staff won't always know what we're doing because there's supposed to be some unpredictability to what we're doing.
Good.
Right? So we do incorporate that as well. We do ask up front at the planning if there are concerns that either, that Julie is aware of. So If you also have concerns and you want us to focus on an area, we kind of address that at planning. And if there is, we will look at that in addition to what we decide kind of to look at, you know, on a random basis. So does that answer your questions?
That answers that part of it, I guess. So if in planning, you look for input from not only Julie, but possibly from council, I'm unaware of having been asked, though, quite frankly, with everything that goes on, I may have missed it.
Okay.
Julie, is that something you put to us during the planning process?
No, not usually. It's more of a management responsibility to ensure that the financial statements are properly stated. I don't know if Nicole has some experience with other municipalities that do request input from council. I have not seen it in my past. Usually it's a management responsibility.
Yeah. Sometimes it's in when there's a planning letter issued, the questions might be in there.
Okay.
But I certainly don't mind as a planning point going forward. We're happy to email council directly at our planning stage, and they can share then independently with us if they do have concerns.
It probably wouldn't hurt for us to have that sort of point of reference, I guess. I don't know that I'd have any concerns that I would voice anyway, but maybe, I mean, somebody with better accounting background, better understanding of financials might have some questions that they want to go directly to BDO on. So that probably wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yep, okay, I will note that.
And then finally, my question was with regards to that $41,000 discrepancy. Would you do follow up on that, like in future audits, or is that something you just lay aside, say that's what happens? It's just 41,000 bucks.
Yeah, it kind of for the public sector, the kind of it's this year and then we move on, and we might readdress it next year if it was, you know, to make sure. But we do look for trends too. Like we do say, okay, is it the same error every year? Is it new errors every year? And some years it might be suggested that we make the adjustment. It's kind of just one of those, it's kind of all over the place as far as unadjusted differences.
Okay.
Different things pop up every year. Sometimes it's a trend, sometimes it's the same thing. It's just not in your, you just don't usually accrue that. So it's just, we sort of look at the dollar amount and decide from there.
Okay, because that would buy me a nice secondhand car, I think. Okay, that's great.
And if I may add to that, I would like to put a little side note that I started at the township on January 8th of 2020, and Celine started at the end of March 2020. And we're doing a 2019 audit. So Nicole did drill us very, very hard because we had to dig a lot because we weren't present and able to answer those questions. Nor were we part of the whole fiscal year where we were able to, you know, make sure that everything was in line and in order. And we actually requested to Nicole that those items not be adjusted just because we've noted them and we will correct them in the future. So
Thank you, appreciate it.
Councilor Douglas, now I think your hand is up.
My hand is up. Yeah, that was a good question coming from
Councilor Jarvis.
Councilor Jarvis. Sorry, early morning for me still. Yeah, I think just for the public who may be watching, I mean, that if it's a $41,000 discrepancy, I'm assuming that's a combination of a few things and not one error. And as you said, Julie, you came on board halfway through the year or even later, actually. But I think it's important that it's brought up because in the big scheme of things, it's a small amount probably with the township and what we're working with within a budget, but perhaps with the our constituents watching that may not be quite their view on it. So I think it's good that we address it. And if you're looking into it further, someone may ask the question as to, you know, did we find where those discrepancies were or not? But I think it's good that we address it and stay transparent on that, because that, in the big scheme of things, that is a small amount, but for our constituents, perhaps not so much. But anyways, yeah, thank you.
Ms. Boutier.
through your worship, those discrepancies are not unknowns. We know exactly where they stem from, and we have chosen not to adjust them. So they're not things that we don't know why they aren't there. So they are we know exactly where they stem from, and we know exactly where we didn't record an accrual and so forth. So in the future, we will make sure that those are properly recorded come year end.
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks for that answer, Julie.
And I'm presuming, if I may, that means that these so-called discrepancies were more a timing difference than something that was missed. Okay, I see nods. I feel much better. Councillor Bocek.
Just a quick question, and I reiterate what Councillor Jarvis said. My wife's an accountant, not me. This discrepancy that we have here, is it on the credit or the debit side?
Okay, so it would be a credit to liabilities and a debit to expenses if we
Okay.
corrected it.
Right. Okay, thank you. I know that much.
Well, I'm just going to add, unlike my the two fellow councillors who aren't accountants, I'm actually a retired accountant, and my wife certainly is not. And just for everybody's information, I have carried on the practice of my predecessor in that I review all expenditures going out, the check runs and the transfer statements and things like that. And as Nicole, our accounts payable woman, and Julie rather, can attest, and my words get mixed up there. I do ask questions when I see things that I don't quite understand, and fortunately, every time I've asked a question, a very logical explanation has been provided. So I will say, for my own personal informal review, the impression I have is that the records are well kept and things are well under control, and I appreciate the fact that BDO is basically confirming that fact. I think that's a very good thing. But so, I am, even though it hasn't been quite as regular in the last few months, I still have been reviewing all the money going out just to make sure that I can understand where it's going. One additional thing that I can tell you, based on watching all that money going out and having BDO confirm it, I looked at one of their schedules, which with regards to, so one of the notes was note 12, operations of school boards and district and municipality. 2019, almost exactly, well, a hair shy, 49.6% of the taxation that we collected from our residents went to district. And which basically means is when I'm looking through those payment runs, almost 50% of the money going out the door in any particular payment run is headed towards district. And 23% went to the school boards, which basically means that of all the money that we collect from our residents, we are responsible for the expenditure of roughly 28% of that, and the rest others have responsibility for. Any other comments that any councillors would care to make before I read the motion? The motion reads, moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that council receives the audit financial statement report and that council approves the 2019 audit financial statement as presented. All those in favor? All right, so that item is carried. Thank you. Okay. Ms. Boutiette has disappeared, so I'm going to presume that means there's nothing more that she wants to add to this item, and that we can now move on to new business. Ms. White, thank you very much for joining us. We greatly appreciate the report, as well as all the work that you've done with the newbies at the township the past half year. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Enjoy your meeting, and your staff were great to work with. So
Glad, good to hear. Thank you. Councillor Cooper,
now.
did you want to add something before Ms. White leaves?
She's welcome to leave, but
okay.
I just
Thank
had a
you.
request with respect to new business.
Yes.
Just to say that since Julie cut me off yesterday, and I am joking, but
Oh, good.
I would like to just take either at the end of the new business, a minute or minute and a half to talk a little bit about my activities, as I didn't have an opportunity to do that yesterday.
Well, I really appreciate the reminder, and why don't you do it right now?
Well, as long as you can bear with me, it'll be relatively short.
Well, you did say 90 seconds, I believe.
Yeah, good luck. Anyway, it won't be much longer. First of all, busy month, and particularly leading up to yesterday's meeting, a lot of discussion with constituents, with planners, with lawyers, etc. So very busy with a variety of different things, both district and local. But I wanted to, first of all, comment that your comments, Mayor, I completely concur with the comments you made yesterday, and I wanted to make these comments as well with respect to the solid waste issue pertaining to the district. We've got some serious problems. And I think just, since we have our waste committee and there's been a lot of information, I think it's important for us to consider what's going on here, especially in light of your most recent remark this morning about almost 50% of our money headed over to the district. And it's the one service that many of us consider, in fact, the only service that many of us can access. And so I think it's a very, very important issue. And, while we have a variety of different services at the Township of Georgian Bay because of our diverse geography, et cetera, transfer stations, supervised bin sites, and I refer to supervised bin sites as those at marinas where the marinas supervise them, which is not being acknowledged, unmanned bin sites, which are highly problematic, and curbside services. So with respect to the comment about that I've been hearing from the district with that there's a huge amount of extra solid waste this year, I just wanted to comment that because of COVID and the marinas being, and the marinas and launch sites being closed, I think what's transpired here is that we've had a lot of solid waste collected in a short time. But if you were to look at the tonnage from May 1st to July 15th, I think you might find that there's probably less tonnage, because everywhere I look around here, I see fewer people here versus more people. And particularly our American friends are not able to be here. So I think the suggestion that the tonnage has gone through the roof is, I think, based on basically a sort of contraction of the amount of time that our people have been here. In the past, I heard from other councillors at the township that, that there might be people bringing waste up from the city, which is an absolutely absurd concept. Why would you load your car up with waste from the city? It makes absolutely no sense. So that's not what's happening. We can be pretty sure of that. That was related to King Bay, as a matter of fact. And what we've done now with King Bay is another serious problem, because even though the King Bay Marina doesn't really want to oversee and supervise the bin sites, we now have created another unmanned bin site along a road where we can end up with a real mess. And we know that most of our unmanned bin sites are highly problematic. So I just want to remind everybody of that. In fact, I think that is one of the key things. The other thing I want to talk about my activities is that if you didn't mention this yesterday, I don't think, Peter, but the CAO from the district, Michael Dubin, has resigned and found a new position for the beginning of September. So there's a search underway. And I think, while he certainly will be missed, I think we will be able to find a new player as the CAO. So that's just another report that I think is important for our group. So thank you. I know it was more than a minute and a half, but maybe no more than 2.5 minutes. So thank you.
I'm afraid I didn't put my timer on.
And we don't want Jessica applying for that CAO job, do we?
No.
I don't want to apply for that CAO job.
Yay.
Councillor Bocek.
Peter, Peter Cooper, just to add a little bit of garbage to your pile. We found out recently that Severn Township has closed permanently their Massadash dump site, which is on Upper Big Chute Road. So we are also receiving all the garbage from Severn Township. Obviously, Severn Township abuts at the Big Chute Marina and also at the bridge. So there's no dump in Severn Township, landfill or dump site. So it's all coming here. I hope you got that because my computer was cutting out.
I did get it, and thank you, Brian. And I do recall that. I think that's unfortunate. There were the recipient of other municipalities' garbage, but I just think it's important for us also to realize that our constituents, generally speaking, are not finding massive amounts of solid waste. I think that's an absurd assumption. So thank you.
Councillor Rienko.
I do agree with some of the issues on garbage, but I think we shouldn't be talking about this particular issue right now. I think we need to get this committee back together and have the committee address some of these issues. So can I have staff to maybe move a little quicker to get this?
You just muted.
Oops, so I get the district back online and get a meeting earlier than later. I know they're working on some of the costs, but I think we need a meeting sooner than later to talk about this issue because we've been mentioning it the last couple of days, and I think it's very serious issues that we have some right now. So I think we got to get moving on this. And so maybe you, Mr. Mayor, and maybe some of the staff can push the district to have a meeting as soon as possible.
CAO Gunby.
I just wanted to agree with Councillor Wango that this is absolutely not the time to talk about this because Councillor Cooper was just expressing his communications and now we've gone way off the agenda. But I do agree that we should be talking to the district, and the mayor and I are talking to the district on Thursday morning. And as we've said before, we can't really have a meeting until we have something to update the committee on. And right now we have nothing to update them on. So after Thursday, we hope to have something else figured out and we'll let everyone know. But I heavily suggest we move back to the regular agenda because my clerky brain is telling me we're not doing anything right at the moment.
I thought you retired your clerky brain.
There's still a little bit left in there.
Okay. All right. With that, we have, I believe, half a dozen items under new business, including the two that we added yesterday on the agenda. And the first one is naturalization areas update. Councillor Bocek, I believe that you put this item on the agenda.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm going to just read off some notes here that constituents have been sending me. Basically, in the past 2 weeks, I've received countless, well, dozens of phone calls and complaints about the community services building, which is beside the township building, and from the Genmac Park, which is on Lone Pine Road and Heath Valley Trail. Basically, when it came to council about the renaturalization, I think myself and other councillors may have had a vision of, on the community services building, maybe a nice big wildflower garden, 6 feet wide, 80 feet long across the front, with wildflowers planted and cared for. What we've ended up with is basically letting a sodded, cared for lawn grow wild. And it's now in the neighborhood of 2 feet long, full of ragweed, goldenrod, all kinds of weeds that people with allergies and asthma really don't care for. The problem being, it's unsightful. The Genmac Park is a deeded access park to the community, the Tickner subdivision. It was given in lieu of funds at the time of the development. For 50 years, we've been cutting, cleaning, weed killing, servicing that, and the families of the Tickner subdivision have used that park for access to the water, canoes, kayaks, family outings, soccer games, etc. for the past 50 years. Now it's 3 feet tall and nobody can use the park. When they do, the kids and dogs come home with ticks. There's overrun with other wildlife there, and it's become an issue. So their thoughts are, with the tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of acres of wildland, crown land, ditches on roads, basically millions of acres of land where pollinators can have fun. This little postage stamp in some of the community services building and the Genmark Park isn't really adding any value to the renaturalization of this township. They feel it's more of a city type of endeavor where you have a concrete downtown city and you renaturalize a park to bring some pollinators back in. We don't have that problem here. Just follow my notes here. So the sodded areas, the areas that taxpayers paid to have sodded, yearly weed killing, maintenance done on that have been allowed to grow wild, they'd like to see those areas recut and wildflower gardens installed. So it's something that people that come to the area can visit these flower gardens and look at all the different species of wildflowers, see the pollinators and that. It's just starting to look unsightly and it's only going to get worse. And I guess that's basically it. The project was supposed to, or the report was supposed to come back in the fall from our operations department on how we felt about it. And I think we're getting the gist of how our residents feel about it now. And just wanted to bring this forward to council and see if there's any way that we still have the employees, we still have the equipment, we still have everything like we've had since the township existed to manicure and cut these areas. I think it's upon us to do what the residents want and get these park areas back into some sort of shape where they can be used, and look at proper wild flower gardens in these areas to service the needs of the pollinators. But that's my constituents' thought. I agree with their thoughts and just kind of wanted to feel out council and see, because I know we are going to be relooking at this shortly, and we want to make some changes, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to that, just with something that's come up in Ward 3 on a couple of different occasions, and it probably will come up again tomorrow in a meeting that I'm going to. I think what Councillor Bochek is saying has a lot of validity to it, and maybe something that we could think about within that process is a community garden of wildflowers, where the community itself, with the seniors, get together and take care of it, or something of that effect. That is something that is growing in population in a lot of communities, to have a community garden, and maybe with wildflowers and just having them take care of it could be a great program for seniors, especially at this particular time. Just a comment to it.
Yeah. Councillor Yanko.
Yeah, I think that they've got some good points there, and I was always concerned that when we passed that resolution last time, that things would get out of hand and it would go back to just being a wild scrub, and that's what's happened. So is there a resolution prepared on this that we can vote on today? Because if we're going to be doing something, especially in those two areas, we should be doing it now so we can enjoy those parks and those areas again this summer. I don't want to wait till the fall to get another report and have to wait another year before things are cleaned up. So is there a resolution, or can the resolution be prepared to bring these two areas alone? Is that all you want, Brian, is these two areas? If so, can we get a resolution now that we can pass?
At this point,
Yeah,
there's no resolution, but we certainly could prepare one. But before we prepare one, I think we should hear from staff.
Just to answer you, Paul, before we go to staff, I didn't prepare a resolution for this. I wasn't sure that simple direction from council to staff may get this started, but if a resolution is needed, I'm sure Karen could facilitate us with that. Thank you, Peter, for letting me speak.
CO Gunby.
I just wanted to state that the report that I sent to council yesterday, the resolution that was passed previously stated this was a pilot project, and that we would come back to you and get further direction. So I don't think we need to rescind any previous resolution. We just need direction from council to I guess, nix the project if that is council's wish.
And
But
I
word
see,
it nicer.
yeah, I see that Mr. Sokash has unmuted himself. Do you wish to speak to us, Mr. Sokash?
No, sorry. I thought there was a direct question coming. That's why I unmuted.
Oh, okay.
Would you like to hear me sing?
No, but thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Brian, just a question for Brian, if you don't mind. Sorry for this, but one of these parks is near the building next door, adjacent to the administration building, but where is the other one? I'm not clear on that one.
So if you follow Lone Pine Road down to the end, it ends at Heath Valley Trail. And there's a bay called Heather's Bay and Leduc Bay that come off that trail. I think there's probably 30 to 40 homes down in there. And it's the whole end of the bay with access, and all the and homes in the Tickner subdivision have deeded access to the water via that property. And it same as I have deeded access here to our parkland. So the concern is 50 years this park is a park, and now it can't be used anymore because the grass is waist height, and the park just sits dormant, and nobody can even get down to put a canoe in the water. Some residents have decided to take a lawnmower and cut a path through the weeds so that they can get themselves and their kids down there. But I just think returning to the status quo the way it was would be the right option at this time. And like Cynthia said, if we could engage our seniors into taking care of wildflower beds, I think that would be awesome. And that's something I would spearhead in my area as well too.
Thank you for answering those questions.
CO Gunby, do you require a resolution from us or direction? Yes. You require a resolution.
Yes, please.
Okay.
I have something drafted. I would just like clarification, Your Worship. I've heard comments of stopping the project completely or making these two areas into more of a community garden space. And I'm just looking for clearer direction. So are we just looking for these areas to be mowed in the meantime, or are we looking for them to be planted green space?
Councillor Bochek.
I think the feeling I'm getting from my residents is they like the renaturalization program. They just don't like the way it rolled out. And, you know, we've spent money on signage, quite large signs on leave it alone, naturalization areas. I think we can still reuse the investment we've put in by having wildflower gardens in these park areas that are maintained, cut, trimmed, and cleaned up. So not necessarily do both at once, but if we could, at this point in time, return to the way it was and simply cut the areas, and then possibly bring another resolution forward in the future for 2021 to maybe, if it's in the budget, I could bring it forward as a budget item to make these wildflower gardens, because I think it is important that we stay in the vein of nature, but as well give people what they deserve for their tax dollars. So I think the resolution could read now, bring it back to what it was and simply cut the lawns, and then look at the cost of building wildlife gardens maybe in the springtime or at budget time.
Could I ask either CEO Gunby or Mr. Sokash, Councillor Bochek has brought up two specific areas. How many other areas were subject to the naturalization project? And the reason I'm asking is I'm wondering whether the resolution should include reference to areas that have been used by the public versus just viewed by the public, because I think that's an important difference.
Sure, through the mayor. The other two areas are the MacTier Arena, which is just a small area, and the MacTier Library, which is a fairly large area. And I haven't heard any complaints or comments regarding that area.
because it seems to me the biggest concern is in the GenMac Park that we've affected a bit folks' ability to use the park, and I think that's was not the intention of us of council when we initiated the naturalization project, was to restrict people's use of township facilities. In other words, I'd hate to see a resolution that mowed everything down when the greatest concern seems to be one specific area. Councillor Douglas.
In terms of the two areas in MacTier, Brad's correct. We don't have an issue presently that I'm aware of, but I think I agree with what Councillor Bochuk is saying. Maybe just bring that back and mow it down this year. But I would like to perhaps get together with Councillor Bochuk to talk about community gardens in the future for all these areas, because I think that is a program that would be, really benefit our township and our seniors especially. So I would be in favor of just bringing it back to where it should be. And then for maybe 2021, perhaps Councillor Bochuk and I could speak about how we could get some sort of community garden started and how that looks.
Councillor Jarvis.
I'm understanding what Councillor Bochuk is getting at here, and I think, and I know that naturalization takes a little bit of time. Mother Nature works a lot more slowly than we do. So given if we had the patience, I'm sure over time things would get to a point that people could enjoy them a little bit more. But I do understand the concept that a park was meant for recreation. And if people can't recreate in it, it makes it rather difficult to apply it as a park. And I think people have a right to their access to the water. So I was thinking maybe if we just provide direction for this time until we do a full review in the fall, if we just gave direction to staff to look at for cutting GenMac Park for its recreational purposes, maybe that wouldn't be so bad. On the other hand, the services building is right in public view, and I'm not sure how we want to handle that. But again, I think Brad may agree that over these naturalization types of projects do take a bit of time to sort of get themselves back to where they should be or would be in a way that is nice for everybody. That's all.
Councillor Bochuk.
The two properties in question are two very different issues. The GenMac Park is because of the deeded access to the people to use the park. The concerns and questions I got about the community service building was basically as such. We have a Clean Yards Act, which was put into place, and under Section 2 of the Clean Yards Act, it says that any grass above 15 centimeters must be cut or we will cut it. We've placed orders against the Willie Toby House in Honey Harbor to have their lawn cut because it had grown up to about a foot tall. We ordered them to cut it. The building department, in order to get an occupancy permit to a new build, which is one of the questions that came up from right across the street from the community services building, the new Esso station, was demanded that they cut their lawn before they get their occupancy permit, because that's in the Clean Yards Act and it's part of their duty. So the two issues are very different. A lot of people are saying we have a bylaw in place to the Clean Yards Act that does not allow grass to be over 15 centimeters long. You must cut it or we will cut it and charge you for cutting it. And that has happened in the past. So I think people are thinking we're talking out of both sides of our mouths here.
CEO Gunby.
Thank you, Your Worship. So to get back to the clerk's question, do you want to have staff cut those two properties, or do you want to cancel the project and revisit entirely next year? I prefer a resolution and not direction to staff, because we passed a resolution for the project. So we should have a resolution if we're deleting the project or any part of it.
So I have how about we show the draft resolution?
Please, because we've discussed this at length now.
Yeah, so Julie could put that up on the screen. Now, my thought process behind this was because it is a pilot project and there is obviously multiple concerns about where this is going and long-term naturalization. Sorry, I don't know what is happening. Mr. Sokash is going to come back with a report in the fall anyways, outlining everything. So I don't know if it's necessary right now. If the community garden isn't something that's going to happen until 2021, then perhaps this isn't something that we need direction on at this point in time. But obviously the mowing and cutting of the grass in Genmac Park, and I apologize, I don't know if I have the spelling of that park name correct. So please feel free to let me know. But I think this maybe will solve the issue for the summer. And then we can hear back and make a further decision for 2021 once we have a wholesome report from the operations department.
Council, I think this certainly addresses the Gen Mac situation, which I think is of the greatest concern to those councillors who have spoken. So unless I see any hands raised, and of course I have to, oh, Councillor Wianko, I had to play with the screens here to see who's there. Councillor Wianko, please.
No, I think it should include I think this resolution should include the community service building. I am still concerned about the MAC tier library area. It sounds like Cynthia is going to a meeting tomorrow with that group up there. And I'm just wondering what that group would think about keeping it the way it is or going back to having it cut this year with the potential next year of some kind of wildflower bed. So I would definitely like to have the community service building put on this with a possibility of adding the MAC tier library area after the meeting tomorrow night. What do you think, Cynthia?
I think that's a good idea. Of course, I'm not going to know too much until I get up there tomorrow night. I have not actually heard any feedback on it, but of course this is unusual times and people are harboring things and I'm sure they're not reaching out. I could always bring it back next month with another resolution if that area is being requested to cut it for this year. But I certainly will be bringing up again in the meeting tomorrow, community garden, which has already been brought up once, but just with COVID, we didn't carry on with it. So I can ask tomorrow and come back next month.
Well, why don't we include it in this resolution? And if tomorrow you find out they don't want it cut, we can just tell staff and they can take it out. But the point is, if you wait another month, you're going to have a hayfield.
Yeah, okay.
And it won't be impossible to cut in a month from now. So why don't we say we cut it in this resolution, we include all three areas. And if tomorrow the MAC tier people want to leave it the way it is, you just got to tell Brad and they can take it out of there.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm fine with that as well.
Councillor Gunby. Sorry, CAO Gunby, please give us some counsel.
Well, I'm going to leave this to the clerk, but in my opinion is the fact that if you pass a resolution, you can't call us tomorrow and say remove part of it.
Yeah.
So it's whatever passes today is what's going to happen.
Councillor Bochek, we are discussing this at extensive length when really all it requires is that we get a lawnmower in certain areas. And so I don't want to have this go on too long. Councillor Bochek.
Yeah, the question you posed, Mr. Mayor, was should we include the community services building? And I'm in favor of including that community service building because we're sending out mixed messages, this isn't the time to be doing that.
Councillor Jarvis.
And I'm in agreement with that. I think that for the time being, let's get those two areas taken care of. The MacTier library, I could check with the library people and see if they're getting any feedback from those that use the library with regards to that, if you'd like.
Okay, so the resolution will now read, be it resolved that council directs staff to amend the pilot project for naturalization areas for Genmac Park and the community services building to include cut grass for the remaining 2020 summer season to ensure the public have access to recreational activities.
And we want that to include the community services building, correct?
Yeah, maybe we just add that where the little flag at the end there saying to include cut grass for
Well,
Well, I mean, I don't know if we're using the community center for recreational activities. So I'm just wondering whether it should be added at the end.
Yeah. Oh, Julie and I are both editing it at the same time.
Oh,
That's awkward. I don't think you need to include anything about so the public remain accessed or have anything. I think that's fine the way it is.
Mhm.
okay. Be it resolved, the council directs staff to amend the pilot project for naturalization areas for Genmac Park and the community services building to include cut grass for the remaining 2020 summer season. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3. Oh, good. I got everybody there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. That is carried. And let's move on to the next topic. Let's see here. I'm just going to.
9B, rural
9B is the rural broadband access, and this is Councillor Jarvis. And we do have a resolution.
Good. I'd like to go with the resolution. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, everybody. And I think based on our experiences here the last 2 days with our own communications, that perhaps I think we fully understand the implications if for a lot of us, an improved broadband would improve our communications in this type of a meeting. There are, I think, 4 letters already filed that came out as part of the CIP from other areas. And I think if we communicated our own support, it can only help to add weight to the importance of getting this broadband set up out into the rural communities sooner rather than later.
Just for everybody's information, the resolution reads, moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved that council supports the municipality of Mississippi Mills, Grey County, Township of Armour, and the Township of Muskoka Lakes in the need to make substantial investments in high-speed internet connectivity in rural areas, and that this resolution be circulated to MP Scott Aitchison, Parry Sound, Muskoka, MPP Norm Miller, not Norma, Norm Miller, Parry Sound, Muskoka, and all other municipalities in District of Muskoka. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Great Lakes water level, Councillor Jarvis. This is item 9C.
And we've got letters, particularly from, I think it's Tiny Township. And I'm trying to pull it up here. There it is. Regarding the effect of the higher water, this is a really complicated issue. If anybody's been paying attention to the talks by David Sweetnam or talked to Mary Muter about this, it's way beyond anything we have direct control over. It's arguable whether anybody has any control over it, but it's ultimately come down to the IJC. But if we can at least pitch I think our support behind communities like this is Tay Township regarding the effect of the high water and trying to get some movement from the federal government, which is where it's going to ultimately come from, to somehow better monitor the water levels in the Great Lakes in general, Georgian Bay Lake Huron in particular.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that, of course, what most people already know, but the middle lakes, namely Michigan, Huron, and Georgian Bay, are not level controlled the way all the other lakes are. And I think that's probably long overdue. The resolution in front of me reads, moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. I don't think that's what Clerk Way intended. So we'll substitute Cooper in there and say, moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that council supports the Township of Tay's resolution to have the federal and provincial governments intervene with the International Joint Commission to better manage and control the lake levels as set out within the IJC mission statement, and that this resolution be circulated to the Government of Canada, Province Ontario, AMO, municipalities in the district of Muskoka. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, now we're on to 9D, which is Go Home Lake parking. Councillor Douglas.
Okay, thank you. You know, we've had a problem with parking at Go Home with the public parking there for quite some time now, and the last council did a visit to the actual Go Home Lake Road and the public parking there because there was other issues that we were dealing with. And one of the biggest issues we had was emergency vehicles being able to get down that road, which has been needed on numerous occasions with all the trailers parked and visitors and campers and boat trailers parked on the side of the road. So just for a bit of background, there has been huge strides made with that. There's now a signage all along the road that does not allow that kind of parking for our emergency vehicles to get through. But what that's done is now put a tremendous amount of stress on the public parking area. We just don't have enough parking for the amount of residents that live on this lake that are not in the marinas or that have more than one vehicle because our marinas don't have enough parking. And then with the visitors and the campers that are coming now, and even more so this year, it seems. And I'm just wondering if we could get staff to maybe take a look at this. I've talked about this once before, about possibly putting in a parking meter as we do have in Port Severn. Whether it's a good idea or not, I don't really know, but I'm just trying to think of ways that we can facilitate that our residents of the lake actually have a place to park. And that our visitors are paying for parking so that we're not running into this problem where people are showing up to get to their cottages and have nowhere to put their vehicles, other than taking them way up the road, which is quite a hefty walk, I might add, where there is no signage. I think if we're going to do something like that, we maybe take a look at making sure that the parking tickets, because I know this was brought up yesterday by Councillor Bochuk, the parking tickets for daily parking are quite a bit more than what they are right now, because it's like the cheapest free parking you can find is in the township of Georgian Bay right now. And I think this is not really helping our situation much. If we're going to do something of this in this direction, that we look at doing parking for at least $30 a day or something that makes it a little bit more reasonable for a person to not come and say, well, we're just going to stay for 5 days at $15 a day. That, you know, doesn't make any difference. So I'm just asking that we have staff maybe take a look at this, and I'm happy to speak with Mr. Socash on this to see if we can come up with something reasonable that may be a workable situation. I don't think at this point we have the possibility of increasing the size of that parking area, because there is quite a bit of rock that would need blasting, and I think MNRF would be involved with that. The other thing that I'd like to take a look at with the staff on this is we created a new small parking area just before the main parking area. The other problem we're having is we have a lot of contractors, and this includes my own company, where we have staff coming in. We don't have staff on the lake. They are coming in and parking, and they are also taking parking spaces. And so that could also include having the contractors pay for a pass for and designate an area for those contractors, which would not just include maybe some of the staff coming in, but people like Telecom coming in, Bell. I would think Hydro has to park with the boat trailer, because that is another issue that has come up from various people in our business community, including our real estate agents who come in with a boat trailer and may only be on the lake for an hour or two, but they are finding what's happening is they're getting ticketed. So they need a designated area. So basically my ask is today that I have an opportunity to speak with staff in regards to maybe finding a solution to the problem.
Thank you. I'm going to read the resolution for everybody, and then we'll see if there's any additional discussion. Moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Wienko. Be it resolved that council directs staff to develop and report back to council on a parking pass system for residents of Go Home Lake and paid parking for non-pass holders. Discussion. Councillor Jarvis, followed by Councillor Wienko.
Due to my ignorance on the small lake situation just generally. Is this something that we could apply to a couple of the other lake areas as well, or is it really just unique to 6 Mile?
Go home.
Sorry, unique to Go Home. What about other lakes?
I can't answer that question. Perhaps some of the other counselors that have, I'm not aware of it being a problem with some of the other smaller lakes that it's not being brought to my attention. But perhaps some of the other counselors with 6 Mile and various other places could comment. There's a lot of places I think are lakes that are drive-in, which obviously isn't a similar kind of problem. Go Home Lake is predominantly all water access.
Councillor Yanko.
I can speak a little bit to the 6 Mile. I know Wawateesa parking lot was expanded a few years ago, and that's helped a lot. And there's probably still more room for expansion if we need to. So I think it's a matter of finding enough area. And I think with this resolution, I don't know if it'll actually solve the problem by putting a meter in. People are just going to still pay, but they're still going to come. And I think the issue is that we need more space there. So I think what has to be added to the resolution is another review, or at least an update on what other potential spaces are available and at what costs. I know there's probably not a lot of options, but again, some of the terrain around there may lend itself to some more additional parking. So I think that's going to be a part of this resolution, that they come back with options for additional parking at Miners Bay.
Councillor Douglas, followed by Councillor Bochek.
Just to respond to that, I mean, the other thing that's being proposed for Miners Bay parking area is the enclosed garbage site. And so this is probably a part of a fairly large conversation, because that is also going to be an issue. And maybe at that time, if that is able to be passed and goes forward, that is the time that we look at expanding that parking lot even further. Just a thought.
Councillor Bochek, followed by Councillor Cooper, followed by Councillor Hazelton.
Yeah, further to Cynthia's thoughts, I can let you know that the parking meter does work. We installed the parking meter here in Port 7 at the Port 7 Park, and it's been a great program. The residents love it. There's room to park. We did remove the fee during COVID-19, and it looks like Go Home Lake. It's really a difference. So if there's no room to expand parking, then definitely you have to look at metering and just keeping some of the people that come up and spend a week and just park their car and go away. I mean, you can't control that unless you meter it. So I agree. I'll support your resolution, Cynthia.
Councillor Hazelton. Sorry, Councillor Cooper, followed by Councillor Hazelton, followed by CAO Gunby. People are waving at me left, right, and center. Councillor Cooper was first.
Thank you, Mayor. Just sort of to add to the list, I wanted to comment that this may not be a solution required by the township, but we do have problems on Georgian Bay Road with respect to McCrae Lake. The road in Georgian Bay Road is often on long weekends jammed with cars, and seems to be no parking or limited parking at McCrae Lake, which is a provincial park. So that's something else that the township could look at. And it is a concern. The road becomes very narrow with parking on both sides as it leads into Georgian Bay itself. Thank you.
Now, Councillor Hazelton.
I just wanted to say this, basically the same thing, that we have an issue there that has been reported to me several times. And if we're going to have staff look into issues related to parking, it's parking along that area, and then the similar things, garbage issues that overload the marina there. Thank you.
CAO Gunby.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, McCrae Lake staff are very aware of the issues there and have visited the site numerous times and are working on solutions. I think they put signs up on one side of the road for no parking to prohibit both sides of the roads being clogged up, but that's another story, and we can keep you updated on what happens there. So my only comment about this is you can definitely give people passes and ticket other people But in order for that to happen, you would have to have bylaw officers there all the time. So one option might be, even though likely super expensive, is putting up an arm. And you have to have a pass that activates the arm. And if you don't have a pass, you can't get in. Because it sounds like a great idea to, you know, charge different fees, but again, unless you have an enforcement officer up there, they could still just park there and just hope they don't get a ticket.
Okay, I'm going to make a couple comments before we do a second round. First of all, I think it does make sense to, as was suggested, to add to the resolution. Um, it currently reads parking pass system for residents of Go Home Lake and paid parking for non-pass holders. And I would think we should just add and possible expansion of parking areas. But I do agree this is a challenging issue. It's interesting how statistically in the last few months, there are far more people camping than have before. There's far more people RVing than have in prior years, that a lot of people under the COVID regime are trying to get into the woods, either taking their accommodation with them in the form of an RV or a tent, or even just day hiking. And whether this will continue in the future, it's hard to say. But I'm also very conscious of the fact that places like Go Home Lake, McRae Lake, just to name two that have come up, we have a lot of day visitors who basically come almost entirely from outside the township, park their car, to enjoy the natural areas that we're blessed with, and leave without contributing a single cent to our operations. And yet, if there's any form of emergency, it's our emergency crews that have to report. So to me, the concept of having paid parking for visitors, I don't think is inappropriate or unfair, even though I certainly agree with CAO Gunby that enforcement may be an issue. But I'm willing to bet that if we hired a bylaw officer to support paid parking in Go Home Lake, that officer would probably have their salary covered by the parking fees collected. Anyway, with that, we'll have one more quick round and then let's vote. And Councillor Hazelton, I see your hand up, and I think I saw somebody else's, but I've forgotten whom. Councillor Wienko is waving actively at me. So Councillor Hazelton, followed by Councillor Wienko, please.
I was just going to suggest that if anyone is going to think about putting in parking gates, parking arms, whatever, they should speak to Nautilus Marina, Stephen Dennington, to the experience that they've had there. I think it's the only marina in the area that has attempted to do that, and it's been a massive fail. So I'm hoping that there are other strategies, and I will leave it to others to figure that out. Thanks, bye.
Councillor Wienko.
Yeah, I don't think any kind of an arm will work. What do you do with visitors? Where do they get a pass, or where do they pay? So I think we have to have some kind of a meter, and I would be worried about vandalism because that parking lot is not visible. So there would have to be a camera put in and all kinds of stuff. So I think we need a report from Brad on that issue. The other issue I just want to mention, because Cynthia did mention that the district might be considering putting in some kind of a waste depot site in that area. I would be most against the idea that the district is putting any garbage facilities on township property where it can be used for other things like an expanded parking at the marina. So I think if the district's going to put in a waste depot at someplace around Go Home Lake, they should find their own property, possibly along the main road. But they should not be using our valuable property at our parking lot where we can use it for cars and so on. So I think, again, we do need a report from Brad to indicate if it is possible to expand that parking lot and at what cost, because it's pretty well all treed and there would have to be a lot of digging and so on. So there would be an expense associated with that. But I think a report from Brad on expanding the parking lot and what it would cost, what it would take to put in meters and possibly a camera to monitor that site.
Okay, so we have in front of us a modified resolution. Councillors Douglas and Wienko, can you consider this a friendly amendment to the original resolution, and will your name stand on it? Okay, I saw one thumb up. I see another thumb up. Okay, so be it resolved that council directs staff to report back to council on a parking pass system for residents of Go Home Lake and paid parking for non-pass holders, identify with cost other parking enforcement alternatives and additional parking areas. I'm going to ask all those in favor. And I'm seeing 1, 2, 3 hands. Oh, Brian's actually put up 2 hands, and so okay, that's unanimous, +1. All right, let's consider that carried. 9E, and this was added to the agenda yesterday. Port Severn Park open to public, and Councillor Bochek, that was an item that you wanted added.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had quite a few phone call conversation with constituents since we've removed the parking fee from the Port Severn Park. I think Peter and I were both receivers of phone calls from constituents that had multiple concerns to do with the park, but the more rational ones were more towards the parking. A lot of our constituents go there on the weekend with their kids and their grandkids and can't park. Since the parking fee has been taken off, the fishing clubs from the city come up almost every weekend, park their trailers and their trucks all over the place. You can't get access to the park. They come up, and according to constituents that have phoned me, they have barbecues in the park and they dump their ashes on the ground and kids step on it. And there's a whole myriad of things that have gone on, misuse of the park area and misuse of the parking area. And I felt that it's time. We're moving into phase 3. Things seem to be opening up more and more in the province. And I think it's time the parking back on that parking lot. Advised our public that if they don't have passes, if our constituents, if they don't have their passes for 2020, that's fine. They can use their ones from 2019, or maybe we can put something online so they can get their passes online since the office is closed. But I really think we need to do something, and the timing is right now to reinstate the parking fee in that park and get it back under control.
CEO Gunby, can you respond to this, or Mr. Sokash, as to what would be involved? Mr. Sokash is actively waving.
I will let him reply.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I actually had discussions with the fire chief, who's in charge of bylaw, about when to put the paid parking back on, with the libraries being able to open up. I believe starting this Friday, if I read it correctly, we'll be able to distribute the passes, and probably a week after that, we'll start looking at the reimposing the paid parking. At least that was our discussion, but we haven't run that by Ms. Gunby yet.
Ms. Gumby, once you're over your shock, do you require a resolution on this matter?
I do not require a resolution because this was a staff decision during COVID that the CEO had authority to make these decisions. So I can definitely, listen to what you're saying and make the decision to do it again. Sorry, implement the parking again. But just as Mr. Sokach said, and Councillor Bochek pointed out, our office has been closed, libraries have been closed. We couldn't give people their passes. We thought it was almost the least we could do at the beginning, but now it's getting busier and busier with people coming in. And it was so hot, we don't have cooling centers, so we thought we would offer free parking still so people could access the beach, because the beach was allowed to be open. We did look at emailing passes or having them use their ones from last year, but they likely don't have it. So there was just so many moving parts to try to figure this out. But yes, now that things can open as of Friday, and hopefully if the libraries do, we'll have to double check, then they can get their passes there, or we can put a sign up asking them to make an appointment with staff so we can ensure that someone is in the building and they can come and get their parking pass.
Councillor Bochek, followed by Councillor Yanko.
That sounds great. That's what the intent of this was basically to just jar a few people at staff and let them know that there is a concern out there. One of the thoughts was that every resident in this township should receive a Township of Georgian Bay card, which is good at the parks. It's good at the transfer stations. It's good at any amenity. Every time you go to a dumping site here, oh, where are you from? Prove where you're from. Show us your driver's license. Give us your tax bill. If we just issued a card to every resident in the township, they could use it for parking, dumps. They could use it for all amenities in the township. I think that was a good suggestion. I thought I would pass it on during this deliberation time. So,
Well, they could use it and so could all of their friends and visitors. So
people
we'll have to look into that.
are trustworthy.
Councillor Yanko, I trust you to make a remark.
I like the idea of the option of using last year's permits. I know some people might have thrown it away, and if those people haven't got last year's, they can get a new one for this year. But let's not let everybody rush into the library and get a pass. So I would suggest that they use last year's passes, and if they don't have them or they don't have one, they go to the library and get a new one this year. So give them the two options until this COVID thing is over, and next year we can go along with the new passes for 2021. But let's use last year's passes and make it a lot easier on life, because I still got mine and so on. So it's easier that way.
Okay, you can leave that with me and we'll get some communication out to the public.
All right, Councillor Bocek, are you satisfied that this has been discussed adequately? Okay. Item G, 9G, Golf Course Road final sealing. Councillor Douglas.
Okay, right. You know, I've had a number of correspondence from constituents on Golf Course Road that are not a part of Oak Bay, the Oak Bay community. I'm sure that Councillor Bocek has also had numerous calls as well. In regards to their road that at one time was a perfectly sealed road, and over the years with the construction going on at Oak Bay, the heavy trucks have, of course, almost destroyed the road to the point where it has now, through operations, had a new surface put on it, which is, I don't know, maybe Brad could just jump in on this one, but it's, I believe, coal patch or some sort of oil and stone situation. However, it's lacking a top coat, and it really does need a top coat. We have some people that live on that road. One in particular who is a disabled person that it can only get around by wheelchair, who cannot use that road. And I have to say that I went down firsthand myself a couple of days ago to look at the road and drive the road, and it's just not, I mean, even in a truck, I'm not that keen on even driving my truck because the stones are all kicking up and into the paint. I really think it's beholden upon us to make sure that our roads are usable to our constituents, and especially when it involves a development that is continually using it for construction. And I'm not sure what, I think most of us were not a part of whatever the site agreement was for that particular development, whether or not they have any responsibility to maintain that road. But maybe it is something that we could look into aside from the point that I'm bringing this up. But I would like to see that that we authorize Brad's department to go ahead and put a top seal on that portion of the road. I don't think it's the entire part of Golf Course Road. It's just a certain portion that they have now replaced after a number of years of potholes and so on, because it really is not, you couldn't ride a bike. There's no children can ride a bike, or an adult or a motorcycle, or most certainly are a disabled person that cannot get out through wheelchair. And I think that we need to make that accessible. So basically what I'm asking today is that we allow Brad to go ahead and put a top coat on that road as soon as possible to facilitate that. And again, I think that we should also be taking a look, and if it's going to be continually used by the golf course, Oak Bay development, do we have anything in an agreement from the past that puts them in a position to help maintain that road? I mean, I'm not so sure that it's up to our taxpayers to continually fix a road because of heavy equipment that's being used for continual development.
Mr. Solcash, you're keen to respond.
Yeah, through the mayor. When I spoke to Councillor Douglas a couple weeks about this, the road was scheduled to be hard topped last week. I was on vacation last week, and simultaneously the contractor had an issue and they weren't able to do it. So it's not scheduled to be hard topped until next week. What is there right now is just the ground material that's been mixed up, the ground asphalt material that's been mixed up with some gravel, and it's packed up really hard, which is surprising. So it looks like it's been hard surface, but it hasn't. So the hard surface is going to be applied next week. And then if it's council's direction, we can get the slurry seal crew back in. And it'll probably be in the range of $10,000 to $12,000 to put the final slurry on. Typically, we do the slurry 2 years after we do the chip seal in order to let the road stabilize, and we get a better product that way. But due to these circumstances, if it's council's direction, we can speak to the slurry seal crew and get them in this year.
CO Gunby.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And to answer your other point, Councillor Douglas, similar to what we discussed yesterday in our meeting regarding Macy Bay, when they would be responsible for paying for the upgrades to the road when the project's completed, that may have been included in Oak Bay site plan agreement, so staff can look into that and let council know.
Thank you. Councillor Bochek.
Yeah, I've been dealing with this as well. And Cynthia, thanks very much for putting it on the agenda. Brad, we spoke about this a couple of days ago, and you said that the company was coming up on the 20th of July to begin paving or to begin doing the hard surface. We have a Leduc Lane, Bonneville, Golf Course Road, and part of Potato Island all tore up right now in the same position. Are they coming up to do all the roads in Ward 3 at once, or just Golf Course Road? Because they're all in the same state right now.
Through the mayor, they're coming up to do all of the township roads, including Moore Point Road, which I think you missed.
Right, Moore Point Road as well too. Yeah, which we're getting a lot of feedback from. Well, that's good, and I think that will solve a lot of issues. And the top seal coat, generally in road construction, you wait a minimum of 1 year for compaction before you put that top seal on the chip coat. I think you're talking 2 years. You were thinking about maybe speeding it up, $12,000, and you could do it this year. Would we be looking at another 2 years away, coming back and redoing it because the road had reached its compaction? Are we wasting our money right now?
We may be looking at doing it again in 2 years. It would be something we would monitor. If I could suggest, I don't think the specific resident we're speaking about has seen the road, what it's going to look like once it's surfaced and there's some loose material on top. So if the council resolution was to approve the money for the slurry seal this year, should the resident not be able to use the road after we've had the chip seal applied?
Yeah.
Perhaps that would help both sides, and we could get it slurry sealed if she needed it, if they can't use it when the tar and chip is down, whereas it doesn't obligate us to do it with the resolution.
Yeah, I'm good
Okay,
with that.
my concern is that Oak Bay right now is moving into phase 2 of the Summerside development, and they're going to be excavating on the east side of that road, moving the material to the marina area, and that's going to be happening over the next few weeks. So I think if we were to go ahead and put on the hard surface on the 20th, but maybe wait till they're done doing all their excavating and moving of equipment, and then do that slurry seal. I'm all for doing it this year, but maybe don't let Oak Bay tear it all up and then we're into a real mess. So maybe we could speak with Joey over at Oak Bay and find out what his plans are before we put the final seal on it.
Mhm.
So,
Through the
CO
mayor,
Gun- sorry, go ahead, Mr. Sokash.
I expect the slurry seal crews are booked up at least for the next month or so. So even with the hard surface going down next week, it'll probably be several weeks before they could get back. And I would anticipate the fall for the slurry.
Okay, and we can reach out to the constituents and let her know that the surface that you're going to be putting down is not a finished product, because she still won't, or he won't be able to run their scooters or wheelchairs on it, because, and it's going to be a dusty, stony mess for a couple months until we do get that top on it. So I think communication is key here. I'll certainly enlighten them to what our plans are.
As will I.
So, CEO Gunby, do we require a resolution? Because it sounds like at least some of the work's going to happen
Anyway.
regardless.
I think if I heard Mr. Sokach correctly, we do, because it's an extra $12,000 he's asking for.
For the final coat.
Mhm.
And that's that's a timing issue, because it's been suggested by a couple of councillors that we consider doing that this year versus 1 or 2 years in the future.
Correct.
So be it resolved that council authorizes staff to apply the slurry seal on Golf Course Road to a maximum unbudgeted amount of $12,000 in 2020, dependent upon the roadway being accessible. To those,
I'm just sorry. I'm wondering, because we don't want it accessible for roads. We want it accessible for someone with a disability, right?
Well,
personally, I
to
would
be
say
honest,
down-
you can't drive a vehicle down it. I can't drive my motorcycle down that road.
I would just put, honestly, I would just put residents, local residents. It's not, you know, it's overreaching then.
okay. And we'll have that moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Bocek. Just to pick 2 names. Any further discussion? Councillor Jarvis, Councillor Cooper. So Councillor Jarvis followed by Councillor Cooper.
I don't have any objections. I understand the situation, and that's rather awkward. We got to do something about it. I'm just curious to know, should we be indicating where the funds are coming from to pay for it?
I'm not in finance, so I would need someone to tell me where those funds need to come from. This goes back to that I'm not an accountant conversation.
Mhm. Brad or Julie can answer that.
Through the mayor, they typically come from the general reserve.
Thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
There we go. Sorry to be a grammar idiot, but depending, not dependent.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't think I see any more hands. So all those in favor of the current resolution, please raise their hands. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I make 7. So that is carried. All right. To the best of my knowledge, we have covered everything on our agenda with the exception of the closing resolutions, unless I've missed something. Nobody's raising their hand to suggest I've missed anything.
I believe we are at confirming bylaws, sir.
So moved by Councillor Wienko, seconded by Councillor Bocek. Be it resolved that Council adopts bylaw 2020-053, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of July 13th, 14th, 2020 council meeting. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And then be it resolved that council does now adjourn at 11:28 a.m. until Tuesday, August 11th, 2020 at 10 a.m. or at the call of the chair. All those in favor? Okay, we are now adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, for the meetings of yesterday and today. I think we've had some very good discussion, and I'm actually looking forward to maybe next month we might actually meet in person.
We're
We may or may-
trying.